From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, I'm Rob Cairns. I'm the founder, CEO, and Chief Digital Strategist of Stunning Digital Marketing. Today I have with me Corry Morris, and Corry and I are going to dive into all things digital marketing. Get back, relax, enjoy the show. The SDM Show is brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing, the digital marketing concierge that helps you put all your marketing pieces together. We are your marketing experts. We are also your WordPress security experts and know how to lock down a website and protect yourself from bad actors. So contact us at Stunning Digital Marketing today. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here, and today I'm here with my guest, Mr. Corry Morris. Hey Corry, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, such a pleasure. So today we're going to talk about all things digital marketing in your book, The Digital Marketing Success Plan. But before we get into that, how'd you get into the world of digital marketing? Everybody's got a story, and I'm curious, what's yours?
Yeah, so I'm in year 20 of my career, and I found my way into it kind of by accident. I was on a path to be an account person in a traditional ad agency. Joined a small
Yeah.
creative shop here in what has become my essentially my second hometown. I was actually born here in Kansas City, but grew up elsewhere on the other side of Missouri, and ended up here and straight out of college. Didn't know anything about digital. It wasn't called digital then; it was internet or online marketing or
Mhm.
whatnot, and found my way into the digital side of what was a traditional agency, and kind of fell in love with it from there. Um, I was project manager, but this was before WordPress or open source anything. So I was sitting between three developers and graphic designer and our clients. So along the way, I picked up some HTML and found my way into to SEO, and from there, kind of found my passion, and it took off.
Yeah, it's interesting how we get into this business, and if I've had a lot of friends remind me who I've known back since college days, say, I'm surprised you got into marketing because I had a marketing prof in college days who I could not stand and swore never again I would ever market. And look at me. So
Yeah.
this is really, it's interesting. Um, It'd be a mess before we dive into your book if we didn't start this conversation with my two favorite words of the game right now, and that's AI. AI has changed our business so much lately. Do you use it? And which type of AI do you like or don't like, or do you have a favorite or not favorite?
Yeah, so I love to test everything, and
Good.
I'm a proponent for clients, friends, colleagues, family members to go test.
Yep.
I'm a tech geek or nerd, so I try out everything and I want the latest anything. And so I'm prone to go spend all day in it. So I have to put some limits and parameters around
Mhm.
it to make sure
Me
I
too.
don't go I don't go chase that shiny object for too long. And I encourage others and friends who are, who get to the end of their day or week and haven't touched it, to push them to schedule time to test and get involved. So I've tested all so many different platforms, from the LLMs to even some leading software and things out there that are leveraging it. But I'm still heavily invested in Chat GPT, and some of that is because of how much time I've invested in training,
Yep.
and
Yep.
it's so hard to take that investment and go re-platform. So I definitely have some tests going in others, but they are not nearly as far along in terms of me training, in terms of voice, tone, and
Yep.
or like some of the efficiencies that I've gained as essentially a virtual assistant and a research assistant, and all the other things where none of them have that many dozens or maybe 100 hours at this point of training in them, for me to fairly judge them. And so, yeah, I'm proponent of testing everything and getting really deep where I can. And for me, that's still in Chat GPT.
Now, what I would say is ChatGPT does a really good job with photos. I've done some photo replacement. So I did an experiment a couple weeks ago. Have you ever seen the TV show The Voice? And they have that little chair that turns around.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I grabbed a screenshot of one with John Legend and took John out of the chair and put myself in the chair and then changed the wording on the back for my partner and on the bottom. And I had ChatGPT do all the image replacement as an experiment. Now, generally, as a rule, I actually use Gemini just because I work a lot in the Google world. I use Google. I have a Pixel phone. It just makes sense. But I agree with you. We have to test, test, test. And I actually do the same thing. I set a clock when I start playing with new tools because if not, my day will disappear on me like very
Yes.
quickly. And it's like that rabbit hole. It just becomes insane. Has it streamlined your work at all, or is it just complicated it?
It's in many cases it streamlined it. Where it complicates it are where, just like you said, I go down the rabbit hole. I go open that tab to go do a 5 minute thing, and then I'm like, oh, what about this? What about that?
Yeah.
Then 3 hours go by, and I overcomplicate the 5 minute thing, and then it's not getting done until next week. But
And then,
it's definitely helped me because it's got all 24,000 words of my book. It's anything that I don't like doing or don't
mhm,
have time doing. That's my general rule, is when I'll turn to
yeah.
it. It unlocks a lot of times when I'm stuck or I just keep running out of daytime or nighttime to get something done. I'm like, after the third day, I just need to go ask for help. And that's where I start.
Yeah, I agree with you. One of the cool uses is, I don't know if I shared this with you when we talked a couple weeks ago, but I'm actually making a series of books from the podcast, and I'm having Gemini build all the chapters of the book from podcast shows
That's
between
awesome.
Gemini and Notebook LM to do it. And it's time consuming, but at least I'm not transcribing all the stuff from scratch, if you know what I
Oh
mean. It's
no.
good.
And a lot of times we need to step away from our own content as well. We're
Yep.
sick of looking at it, or we don't see
Yep.
something, see an insight, or we don't catch something interesting out of it. And yeah, no, that's an awesome use case.
Yeah, it is. It's been a lot of fun too. So I'm doing like 10 volumes, 50 episodes of volume and just kind of growing from there. You wrote a book and you talked about a marketing success plan. So what drove you to write the book, first of all? Because everybody's got reasons for writing a book. Some to share, some as a lead gen tool, some as a few others. Why'd you write yours?
Yeah, I was looking for what kind of big cornerstone piece of content to create that would be
Yep.
helpful, and that I could be consistent with talking about and bringing to the industry. And so, a couple of years ago, I went down this path, went to some great workshops, read a great book about kind of claiming your authority position and being confident and talking about what you know. And so, this around the time AI was emerging, I was getting challenged by a couple of fellow agency owners. They're like, "Huh, you're still really niching down and doubling down on search marketing and SEO." And
Yeah.
like, yeah, I am. And so I started explaining, and I realized I was giving this similar answer over and over about whether we stop calling it SEO and it evolves, or we're doing something else to optimize for AI search and where things are
Mhm.
going. There will always be brands out there that need to be found by their target audience. And there's that gap between. And in fact, my working title was Be Found. But I ended up realizing, as I try to look at the substance of that, that was just kind of an esoteric type of topic where I could get a couple of chapters of explaining it conceptually, but not be able to get out into
Yeah.
something that's helpful and tangible. So I turned and looked at how we do that for clients. And really, that our initial strategy and marketing planning process was the consistent point of what we do. And not saying that, everybody has a strategy and planning and goal setting
Mhm.
process, but how we do it, I thought was unique. And we got it to a point where we could articulate it in 5 steps in an acronym called START planning, and being able to share. And I was willing to share that openly with the world. In fact, I've got a separate business entity for it. The framework all lives over there. The IP lives over there. yes, my agency implements it, but it's standalone as well, because I didn't want it to just feel like a Trojan horse for another agency service or pitch
Yeah,
that you'd follow your way into.
I
But to
get
really
that.
be a helpful thing that you can pick up the book for 10 or 20 bucks and go work on implementing, or find a slice of it that helps fill a gap in your own process. But it's as important as ever to have a plan and to have things documented, because of all the distractions we have coming at us, from
Hmm.
AI to privacy
Yeah.
things to Google potentially
To
have to spin off Chrome and everything else that's here and that's coming.
Yeah, it's so true. And you know it's interesting. You're talking about your agency's implemented, but here you are giving away the secret sauce in a book. And I've had this conversation with people many times over the years. I've been in the online world, oh, probably since the 90s, in one way or the other, even before the internet was formed. I've kind of been there. And everybody says, why do you people on the internet give away so much? I said, because when people realize and understand it and also realize it's complicated to be an expert, they're going to hire you anyway. So
Yeah.
I'm a big believer that you share even your best content and they'll hire you anyway. How's your thinking around that?
Yeah, I love that. I have friends who use the term be, relentlessly helpful. And obviously, when you do that, things
Yeah.
come back to you. And I've learned over the years how to sell myself out of a deal that's not right, as well as
Yeah.
selling myself into the right deal. So I'd rather have people be exposed to it, take pressure off the sales process, have them not feel like they've got it's all behind this closed door and they've got to just trust me and put all the pressure
Mhm.
on us. And then we'll work together for a few months or 6 months, and then it's not working, and I'm turning over clients. I'd rather have a smaller number of clients where we get really deep together. They understand what I'm about. We've worked our way through it on the front end, and we're right fit from the start.
Yeah. And I just want to stop for a minute. You just emphasized something I so agree with you. You sell yourself out of a deal or into a deal. What agency and business owners need to realize is not every deal is a good fit, is what you're saying. So sometimes we need to get out of it. Sometimes we need to get out of that bad client and find a way come contract renewal time. I just did it with a client recently who's was a disaster for months and wouldn't take the right advice and wouldn't do the right things, and it's everybody else's problem. And his contract came up for renewal, and I gave him 60 days and said, basically, go away. And sometimes you got to do that. You got to sell yourself out, right?
Yeah, and it costs just like an employee, an agency, or close partnership. I
Yeah.
mean, if everybody's not working together and it's not just raising the profile for everyone, then somebody's probably losing money. Somebody's probably out of scope or not working in their niche, or is
Hmm.
struggling to make it work. And the cost of the toll of your rest of your clients, or your time and
Yeah.
attention, or the stress, or turning over an employee because that client was terrible. And when I say terrible, 99% of bad clients are not a bad company or people. It's just the wrong fit, right? And it's
Yep.
maybe wrong fit for where, and it can change over a few years too, right? Of how you're growing, or season of life, or season of
Yeah.
companies,
Yeah.
and be able to recognize what that's costing you, even in soft costs behind the scenes. Whether you're an agency or even my clients who are, if it's service-based businesses, it's easy to just ignore it and not realize what it's really costing you in the end, and what it costs you to replace that.
Yeah, so true. And I don't think I could have said that any better myself, frankly. So thanks for sharing that. Um, you got 5 parts of your success plan, which you talk
Yeah.
about in your book. Would you want to kind of outline them?
Yeah. So it's an acronym called START. And so naturally it starts with strategy. I can go into so many different examples, as I know you probably can too, of where we see tactics as
Yep.
the strategy. And yes, there are best practices and all these good things that you should be doing, but they may not be the right things, or might not be in the right context, or moving the needle for you if you haven't gone through at least and
Mhm.
said, time out, we got to get the strategy right. So the strategy phase gets into getting team alignment. I mean, I've had companies where people around the table have all been there 20 plus years, and they're using the same inside baseball language in their industry, but they mean
Yeah.
very different things with how they define those terms based on how they look at things from a sales perspective, a product
Mhm.
perspective, a
Well,
financial perspective. And so getting one thing is getting definitions on the table and getting us aligned around what a goal is and what success is important.
yeah.
But then we get into auditing, understand what you have so you don't accidentally throw out something positive as you devise a new strategy. And so auditing what your current standing is and ultimately getting down to a goal, a ROI driven goal that you can articulate and and it can be connected to who you serve, how you serve them, how you're different in the marketplace, but what that monetary goal is of how you measure and link marketing KPIs to a business outcome. That's another one of the biggest challenges I see and why people think marketing doesn't work, that digital marketing doesn't work or doesn't work for them, or are skeptical of it because they've never been able to fill that gap. They get, traffic and conversions, but they never can really figure out how that conversion maps out to actual revenue and
Yes.
profitability and lifetime value. And it seems simple, but that gap exists everywhere. And getting over that hump early on means that we can look at marketing as an investment with an expected return on investment instead of just a big, busy expense that is going to
Yeah.
be the first thing that we're going to cut or write off when we think it doesn't work. And so getting that locked in and and the strategy in place and those very finite goals that we want to look at carries really through the rest of the process, because that allows us to move from the S, from strategy, into the T, which is tactics. And that's where we can
Yes.
now put everything on the table. We know what lens we're looking through. We can go into the native platform research tools and planning tools. We can use third party tools. We're looking at our
Yeah.
audience. We're understanding now, okay, we need 50 leads a month and we need them to qualify and be of this volume or whatever. And so when we have those metrics, we can go look and see how this stacks up, look at our customer journey funnels and understand what platforms, channels and platforms are right for us. You get those locked in, and now we're ready to really get some momentum through the rest of this process, because we move into the A, which is application. And this is where we're looking at the different assets we need and how this strategy will be applied. What kind of flights of display ads, text ads do we need if we're doing paid search or
Yeah.
programmatic? What kinds of content do we need, and does our current content strategy and production schedule match what we're going to need for the channels that we've identified
Yep.
and the tactics involved? And let's not forget about our website. The biggest asset out there, is it ready for us to invite people to the party? Is it ready to host? Do we have any conversion rate optimization things we need to do? Does it support the content? Is it at the level we need it to be before we start pumping dollars into sending traffic here? The R is review. I could have called this reporting, but I like to keep it more broad, because this is not just throwing up a dashboard. This is not just connecting GA4 to something, but this is making sure that you have connections into CRM or ERP or whatever systems that you're going to track
Mhm.
this all the way through. So it's not just a vanity digital marketing metric that leaves a gap for somebody in the C-suite or your CFO to try to figure out if it's working or not, or the sales team be like, those leads suck. And then you're like, but those
Yeah.
are great, and you're in a classic debate over that. But to be able to understand how you can get things connected, well, and GA4 out of the box doesn't do a lot of things for you anyway, and it tells you it does, and they're wrong, and it's that
Yeah, of course.
attribution is off. So just making sure that you've got your house in order for how you're going to measure things and connect the dots all the way through to ROI is important. And then the second T and the last part of the process is what I call transformation. This is bringing it all together. This is getting a documented plan. This doesn't have to be on paper, doesn't have to be 50 pages, but it needs to be documented somewhere. Some of the biggest challenges are that one person wears the marketing hat, they leave. Okay, well, then your
Yeah.
plan and everything you'd be doing just went out the door with them. Or
Yeah.
it's too personal. I'm the marketing person or director or coordinator, and I have a team. And now somebody, my CEO comes to me and is like, is it working? Is it not working? Well, it's too personal if it's just what's in my head or my strategy versus the strategy that we've all agreed to. It's on paper or on screen, and we've
Yep.
all signed off on it, and it's objective. And so then if somebody says, hey, what about that audience? Great idea. What about that audience? Timeout. Even if it's a 5 minute timeout, let's go look at how that changes the priority of the other audiences and budget allocation. Or am I getting new dollars? Where is this coming from on that CEO
Yeah,
drive by or whatnot? But getting that plan in place, there's nothing worse than having it all ready to go and then not have the resources you need as well. Okay, we've got this ready to go. We need to implement, and then our web development team is booked for 6 months. I had that happen with a national restaurant chain. And I'm like, okay, well, they can't implement anything. How are we going to pivot from there and make sure that we're still moving forward? So that's the process. 5 steps. Like I said, I unpack it all here. There's a lot of real examples in there where I've changed names of companies and
of
people
course.
to get absolutely to the truth of some of these stories of what's worked and what hasn't, to bring that to life too.
I think a lot of the problem is, and you've worked with some big companies, and so have I over the years, is it's really hard to take a company, especially a Fortune 500, that is old school into the digital world. I think that's starting to shift, but I think like 10 years ago, that was really hard because they're still doing old school marketing tactics. For example, there's a reason why we're both hockey fans. You turn on a hockey game and you see 50 Coke ads in 3 hours, right? They're ramming it down. It's brand recognition. Everybody knows what the Coke can looks like. It's iconic. Everybody knows what a McDonald's arch looks like. It's iconic. That's because it's been rammed into our brains over years. Don't think that tactic works as well in the digital game at all, frankly. It's not works as much anymore. And I think that's hard. The other problem a lot of companies have a problem with in the digital game, and you'll probably agree with me, is the rules keep changing. If you're running PPC, pay-per-click marketing, if I had $1 for every time Facebook and Google and some ad network changed the rule, you and I would be retired on a beach somewhere in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that gets overshadowed because it's still pitched
Yep.
as a platform that you can turn on tomorrow and be running ads. Well, you can, and I'm a Google partner, and they haven't caught up with me over the years. What I keep saying, even though I'm a Google partner agency, Google will take your money whether it's working or not. And I
Yes,
fundamentally
they will.
disagree. In the partner program, I agree with wanting to add clients because I'm growing and adding clients and wanting to follow the best practices and be certified. But
Yep.
I will never agree with them that's on the metric where they want to measure my performance in the partner program of getting my clients to spend more money, and increasing my clients'
Be,
budgets.
because you're ethical. A lot of agency owners aren't ethical. They'll say throw money at it, and they don't care because if you run your PPC campaigns the way I do, you charge a management fee and the client's being billed directly, usually, right? To their
Yeah,
credit card, not to yours. So a lot of
yeah,
agency owners, I hate to say it, they just don't care for it. Well, the client's paying for it. And I'm like, no, because if you're not successful, not the client can be successful and your reputation's on the line too, right?
yeah. And so, yeah, the complexity, yeah, and it's hard because it changes, and
Yeah.
then I would be at the mercy of one tweak that Google makes and doesn't tell us about till 3 weeks later, and there's a data gap
Mm-hmm.
and we can't get it back, and then I'm having to justify that for how I bill, and it's just for me, yeah, a conflict of interest that I don't want to be part of.
No, I agree with you. And to me, ethics are everything in what we do. I mean, I've stood there and told clients over the years, I don't think you should do this. Oh, you won't just take my money? And I'll actually say, no, I won't. I don't need it that bad. So that's not worth the
And you're going to
long-term
hate me in
impact.
6 months if I took it and it didn't work when I could have told you on the front end it's not going to work.
Yeah, that's true. The other thing we need to get as digital marketers, people out of is there are still a lot of people that say, I built a great looking website. It looks nice. It's pretty, but I'm getting no conversions. And I think part of our problem is for what you and I do is sometimes convincing clients that their pretty website isn't generating them leads or conversions, which convert to sales and making them money. So I think we got to keep convincing our clients that they need to think about that as important as making the website look pretty.
Yeah, and that's really important for me.
Yeah.
So the two things that my agency does are search marketing and websites, and those are intertwined in so many ways for us, where it's hard, even if I have a client who isn't engaging with us on the digital marketing side of things and only comes in for a website. It's not optional for us to not do some of the SEO things that we're going to do built into the scope and built into
Mhm.
the site, and to not think about some of the UX and ask about, conversions and how to get through that,
Yeah.
because we can't turn off that part of our brain. Now, I know, and to be honest, I've lost a few projects because I work with a lot of B2B and some B2C as well, but more transactional, and like get people through the flow and be functional and be a revenue machine B2C than to be the most creative, nobody's ever seen a design like that before type of website. And so I've lost a
Yeah.
couple over the past few years based on my portfolio not having every single website show the most creative thing somebody's ever seen, or the first
Yeah.
time somebody's done something like that on the web. And I'm okay with that because, to your point, I look at things in a balanced way. Yes, I want you to have an industry leading design, but I also need it to be understood by the lowest common denominator in your audience from a functional and UX perspective, so you can make money off of it and not have the "if we build it they will come" syndrome that
Yeah.
happens.
And a good example is look at a media site. Go look at CNN.com. Go look at any major newspaper, the Times, the Washington Post, the Toronto Star in Canada. Those websites are pretty simplistic, but
Yeah.
it enables somebody to get in, get the information they want, and get out. And that's really what people want. The other thing I would say, and I'm spending a lot of time on websites, is really, and I hate to go down this road, but I'm going to, is spend some time making sure you secure that website properly and you find a way to keep it up to date, because we're seeing more and more increases with hackers, and people always say, I'm a small business, they'll never touch me. And I'll laugh and argue every day to Sunday that the first one they're going to go at is the small business, because they have that mentality, a lot of them. And then they'll get hacked and they'll use that site to leverage to have a bigger site. And then your reputation's on the line. And that reputation is not worth not securing your website.
Yeah. Security is, I mean, I get annoyed at it, but I also have the comfort of knowing when I go into a filtered, subset
Yep.
of messages I see every morning of how many different things got blocked overnight,
Yeah.
of my client sites. And so that's super important. And sometimes it's an afterthought or something that's one of the last things I'll talk about with a client or a prospect is what's your plan for hosting and for maintaining, and it's WordPress, for example, of any core updates, any plugin updates, what's your risk
Hmm.
assessment, ongoing analysis of it, and monitoring. There
Hmm.
has to be an active process, because it's not
Yeah,
if, it's when, if you don't
I
have it up
agree.
to.
And it's like when, like for example, does the average business owner know last week there was, depending on which plugin report you read, there was like 310 new vulnerabilities out there? Does the average new business owner know there's a WordPress fix 6.8.1 coming out this week, which has a security fix in it? That's one of the core tickets. I mean, that's the point. I don't think you
Yeah.
can compromise that. And do they really know what's going on? And then does the average business core owner have time to do this stuff, even if they know what's going on? They should really be spending time working on the core business, which generates some income, instead of doing all this little stuff that, not little stuff, but stuff they shouldn't be doing is a better
But
word to
it
put it.
can be little if you stay on it and have a proactive process and approach to
Yes.
it. To your point, yeah,
Yeah.
it's small activities each week, or and with proactive monitoring and applying those can save from the big hassle and blow up down the road.
Yep. Is most of the websites your agency's doing WordPress these days?
Yeah, yeah, that's been our focus. We've explored other technologies, but WordPress gives us the range of being able to do everything from e-commerce to custom,
Yeah.
features and functionality and integrations to being, the most widely used and easiest to have vetted and supported technologies if we use anything third party as well.
Have you stayed with a common page builder, or have you actually jumped into the block world at all?
So most of what we do is our own custom theme, but we
Okay,
don't get so custom that we mess up the core or make it so it's
that's cool.
something that you can't apply security updates to. And then I'm now in
Yep.
charge of security for my version of WordPress.
So there you go. Oh, well, yeah, and that's a common problem. And then people wonder why they got an issue, or they didn't use a child theme and something breaks and it's overwritten, and here we go, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. We like the
um,
balance of being able to be in the core, but have the ability to not be beholden to anybody else in terms of being able to update the code and have ownership over it.
no, I agree with that. I also agree. Have you guys been pretty good at convincing your clients that not every person needs admin rights access to your WordPress site, like just because you're the owner?
Yeah, we work on so in our history until just a couple of years ago, we did branding as an agency as
Okay,
well. We were started as a creative agency, turned into a digital agency. And so I'm still personally a stickler on brand standards
good.
and while we'll work to make sure that here in the States we're working toward, commonly accepted ADA standards for
Yes.
how we do things. We can't guarantee, we're not lawyers. We can't guarantee things. We can't certify it, but we're going to help make sure it passes those kind of comforting checks at launch. But we also will warn our clients and try to make sure that they have access to change and manage all the content they want, but make sure that they have some protections built in for themselves as well. So they can't go um, too crazy from a brand perspective or an accessibility one to get themselves in too much trouble.
Yeah. ADA is a big deal, like accessibility, especially if they're a public entity. So a couple of years ago, I did a short-term contract, short-term, 9 months that I took. That was like 3 days a week for the College of Family Physicians of Canada. And they are a public entity. They have chapters in every province, and then they have a national organization. And I helped them redo their email marketing so it conformed to accessibility standards. And nobody thinks of accessibility in email. They always think about
Right.
web and that side of it. Well,
Yeah.
guess what, folks? Email's a big deal too. So
Yeah.
it
And
had
even more
challenges.
restricted in what you can do.
Yeah, it's so true.
Right.
Um, so kind of moving forward, if you were a small business and you were going to give an owner a couple quick tips about digital marketing and what they should do you have 3 or 4 quick takeaways that you can share?
Yeah. So one, if you don't know if it's working or not, if you have any question in your mind, if you're in that camp, I would say time out. That this is exactly the reason you need to take a step back and understand, especially with the economic things going on in this world. If you're
Oh
tempted
yeah,
to push pause on marketing, that indicates to me that you probably don't have the full visibility all the way through to see what it's really doing to your revenue. And so I
yeah,
hate to see people do, what you could, the test that you would do with the billboard. Okay, well, let's not run the billboard or take not let's not do radio this month. If you have no level of attribution, the turn it off test is not the way I want you to find it out because you have the ability
hmm
to know online. And so challenge it, whether it's, I'm not saying go blow it up, not don't go fire everybody, but go, but start with yourself and your own understanding of it, and then start digging in from there to understand if you truly can know the impact, or if it's knowable, you just don't have all the parts and pieces coming your way to
yeah,
see it. And another one is the tactics versus strategy that I talked about earlier. I mean, there's so many
yeah, so true.
we've been in an era of social media and content creation. Well, it's like, well, we got to create 4 blog posts for the site this month, and we're posting 7 times a week on every social media platform because we've always done it that way. Well, what is it giving you? That may be the perfect like ratio of what you should be doing, but do you know, or is it just because a person who was in this seat before me was doing it? And where I think my CEO likes to see it out there, challenge that, and have conviction
Yeah.
behind the what and why of what you're producing, because content can take a lot of time. Even if you're using AI, it can take time, it can be soft costs, and you may not be getting the return on it, or you may be getting a return in some areas. You can refine it further and create it one time and use it 10 places instead of vice versa.
And really, if you're posting on, say, 7 sites, where's your target audience? Do you know what your customer profile is? If your customer profile is over 40, then I'd say TikTok is probably not the site for you. I mean, like, let's be realistic here. You know, are you doing B2B? If you're doing B2B, Facebook's probably not your market. It might be, but it's probably not. So
Yeah.
that's the point I'm saying is know where your profile is, know where your people or your tribe is going, and then gear it that way, not just shooting darts at a dartboard blindfolded.
And that's a great point too. That actually is a perfect connection to my third and final thing that you should be looking
Yeah.
at is you can't just now, with all the disruption, even though yes, Google still has the lion's share of the search share. You can't just sit behind personas and write content and blindly throw it out to these nebulous categories of
Mhm.
audiences and assume that in a week or in 6 months, they're still going to be consuming content the same way in the same places. So in some industries, it's like a week by week looking at and making
Yeah.
sure you have visibility and it's not hidden by the way that GA4 or any other analytics package measures traffic sources, but you really understand the evolution of where your audience is, how they're consuming your content and refining it. Used to be we could go year to year on a lot of these plans and then revisit and take a big sample size and
No more.
aggregate. We've got to be much more scrappy and agile and understand where people are getting their questions answered and where you can be found essentially.
Yeah. And what I would suggest to anybody, you sort of talked about economic uncertainty to kind of close this out is economic uncertainty is a great time to thrive. If you look at Amazon, they built their business in the dot-com bust. They went around buying properties and right now they're running around buying shopping malls with all the changes going on. They're taking advantage of economic downturn. It's time to build, not the time to give up. And that's kind of my take on it is now has opportunity written all over.
Absolutely. I mean, I know there are companies that are acutely impacted by tariffs and other
Yeah,
things, but if you are not in that camp and you're okay from a cash position, everything else, and you see competitors, even if they're massive Fortune 500s and you're a challenger brand in your industry, with them sitting on the sidelines or dialing things back, is a chance for you to go zoom right past them and go grab your market share.
no question. Corry, thanks for this. If somebody wants to book or to get in touch with your agency, how are the best ways out there?
Yeah, there's two great ways. So the book title is The Digital Marketing Success
Right.
Plan. It's available on Amazon, but I've got a website for it. That's a long title. So I've shortened it to the dmsp.com. And so that's where you can find the framework. I've got some free tools on a page there, just for your audience at the dmsp.com/blueprints. And that's a great place to engage with me or get the content, no strings attached. Or if I can be helpful any further or my team can in other ways, our agency can be found at voltage.digital.
Thanks so much, Corry. Have yourself an awesome day, my friend.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Rob.
Thanks. This podcast has been brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing, your digital marketing concierge to help the business owner put all his pieces together, whether it's email marketing, WordPress security, WordPress design and development, PPC, and more. Text Stunning Digital Marketing for all your digital marketing needs today. Very special thank you to Corry Morris for joining me on this edition of the SDM Show. The SDM Show is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I miss you very much every day. my mother, Ann Cairns, who's still doing really well and is an inspiration. And of course, Tiz Maroney. And Tiz, I know I've said it, but thank you so much for all the inspiration you give me every day.